Well, we're already seeing comparisons between Hillary Clinton's 2016 loss to Vice President Kamala Harris's defeat last night.
One moment that felt eerily similar was the speeches given by both campaigns' co-chairs.
It's been a long night, and it's been a long campaign.
We still have votes to count. We still have states that have not been called yet.
They're still counting votes, and every vote should count.
So you won't hear from the vice president tonight?
Everybody should head home. You should get some sleep. Thank you so much.
And let's bring in Evan McMorris-Santoro and Sabrina Rodriguez. Evan is a political reporter for NOTUS. Sabrina is a national political reporter for The Washington Post. And Evan, you've been covering this race from the beginning. When it came to the states that Trump won, some of them easily, where were you most surprised?
Well, you know, that blue wall did not stand at all. In fact, I think it's kind of interesting. You talk about this comparison between 2016 and 2024. It's true that people stayed up late and Democrats sort of held on, hoping that maybe this would come through in the end. But the reality of the situation is these are two very different elections. In 2016, President Trump did not win the popular vote. Hillary Clinton did by a significant amount. And it was really a question of what kind of country are we going to have after this? What do we want to have in a president? It led to a lot of conversations after that. This election last night was America wants Trump, and they got him. It's a very, very different race.
Sabrina, what did you make of where Harris fell short, particularly among certain demographics?
I mean, I think the most notable one that's being talked about today is Latino voters and where Harris ultimately landed. You know, she got a majority of Latino voters, at least based on preliminary exit polls, and we'll have more data, obviously, in the days and weeks to come. But there has been this question about, you know, her performance specifically with Latino men and men more broadly. It's not a complete surprise for those of us that have been covering this for months. I mean, this was a challenge that her campaign was having. You know, the thought was that women were going to help, you know, deliver the presidency for Kamala Harris. And sort of there was this challenge around her messaging toward them, whether it was Latino men, Black men, white men overall. But I think we saw it come to fruition. I mean, exit polls are showing us on Latino men specifically that it could be as much as, you know, a majority and more than 50% having supported Donald Trump. And that makes a difference in a lot of these battleground states where Latino voters, you know, are a growing part of the electorate.
Sabrina, it's interesting. We maybe don't mention enough the fact that this campaign, the Harris campaign, was crammed into an amount of time that we overlook sometimes. It feels like these two candidates have been facing off against each other forever. They have not. How much of what went wrong do you think is a Kamala Harris problem, the Democratic Party problem, or is it partially the fact that she didn't have as much time to campaign as an incumbent would have?
People spend longer planning weddings.
They sure do. But, you know, I think that this predates Kamala Harris. I mean, this election, you know, he may not have been on the ballot, but this election was also a rejection of Joe Biden. You know, Americans did not want to see him on the ballot. We saw in polls time and time again before he dropped out and ended his reelection bid. We saw that Americans did not want him to be running for reelection. They didn't like the choices that they had between him and Donald Trump. But Kamala Harris, you know, joining the ticket and becoming the nominee didn't take away those concerns that people had. You know, she was at the end of the day, you know, Biden's vice president. And I think that, of course, put her in a difficult position, you know, running this campaign as the vice president of the United States to Joe Biden. You know, she struggled clearly early on in the campaign with how to differentiate herself between him. I mean, to this day, you know, even last night at the polls, voters were mentioning to me how, you know, when she answered a few times about how there wasn't a difference between her and Joe Biden. So I think that was a huge challenge. And just the fact that this did not go through the standard process. We didn't have a primary. There wasn't, you know, multiple candidates fighting out for what the prevailing, you know, message and vision was going to be for the Democratic Party. And I think that is something that Democrats are going to have to really reckon with now after this loss.
Evan, there's always a blame game after a campaign fails. There was a lot of talk of closet Harris voters, people secretly voting for Harris and not telling their friends and loved ones. Maybe the story actually is the closet Trump voter. What are you hearing from high-profile Democrats?
You know, it's interesting you bring that up. I spent a lot of time at the end of the election cycle with their Democrats who are trying to get those Republican women to sign on and sign up. You know, Liz Cheney out there with the vice president trying to get these people. They really, really did believe that there was this hidden, angry Republican woman that was going to come out for them, and it didn't really happen. If you go to NOTUS.org right now, where I work, we have a ton of stories about what high-level Democrats are saying to each other about what to do next for their party and what went wrong. One of the most interesting ones that I had a conversation with somebody that I had today was a guy that works a lot with union workers and labor voters, and they said actually, you know, the way that they do their organizing there, obviously we remember from this election cycle, a bit different than usual. Not all the unions endorsed Kamala Harris. The Teamsters famously deciding not to endorse anyone after doing a poll of their own membership showing overwhelming support for Donald Trump. But this activist was telling me that one of the things that unions do is they do a lot of one-on-one conversations with union members. Union member talking to a union member, that can kind of change things around and bring people to their side. They feel like they made their targets, actually, that they actually did very well with those conversations. But he took this conversation all the way back to NAFTA, right? The 90s, that era of Democratic politics, and saying the universe of union voters for us to persuade is so much smaller now because of things Democrats did all the way back then, that he thinks that those need to be addressed before you can go to the future. So Democrats are looking at something really existential right now. Like, they are really talking in broad terms about huge changes to their party. And, you know, we're going to have a lot of conversations about that going forward. But I was just fascinated to hear this guy talk about something that happened, you know, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, as the trigger for what happened last night.
Yeah, it's such interesting stuff. Sabrina, Obama's just put out a statement and said in part, quote, "In a country as big and diverse as ours, we won't always see eye to eye on everything, but progress requires us to extend good faith and grace, even to people with whom we deeply disagree. That's how we've come this far, and it's how we'll keep building a country that is more fair and more just, more equal and more free." What do you make of that?
I mean, I think that's the right message that we're going to hear from, that we've now heard from Obama and from Harris, and we'll be hearing from some Democrats in the days to come. You know, the reality is that Washington in January is going to be a very different one. We already know, of course, Trump winning the presidency and Republicans having a Senate majority. It's possible that Republicans will also, you know, take control of the House. So Democrats being in a position to work in good faith with Republicans is going to be a challenge, but is going to be a very necessary one in a Washington that is dominated by Republicans.
McMorris-Santoro and Sabrina Rodriguez, thank you.